The Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafra War, remains a scar on history. From 1967 to 1970, this brutal conflict tore apart a newly independent nation. It claimed over 1 million lives, mostly innocent civilians, rooted in Nigeria's complex ethnic, religious and political landscape. The nation inherited a system of governance from its British colonizers that exacerbated tensions. The three largest groups, Hausa Fulani, Yoruba and Igbo, vied for control. Economic disparities and power struggles created resentment. The Igbo declared the Republic of Biafra in 1967. This ignited a conflict that shocked the world. Nigeria's journey to independence in 1960 was fraught with challenges from colonial borders. These borders forced disparate groups into uneasy alliances. British divide and rule policies cast a long shadow. Ethnic tension and political instability sowed seeds of conflict. Military coups in the mid-60s deepened divisions. The January 1966 coup by Igbo officers was seen as an attempt at domination. The July counter-coup led to the massacre of thousands of Igbos. Violence forced many Igbos to flee to the southeast. 1966 events created a climate of fear and suspicion. Feeling vulnerable, the Igbos saw secession as their only option. The stage was set for a brutal and tragic chapter in African history. To understand the Nigerian Civil War, one must first delve into the turbulent waters of its colonial past. British colonialism, while credited with uniting disparate ethnic groups under a single banner, also sowed the seeds of discord that would eventually erupt into open conflict. The British policy of divide and rule, consciously or unconsciously, exploited existing ethnic and religious differences to maintain control. This policy fostered a system where certain groups, often favored for their perceived loyalty or economic value, were granted preferential treatment. This created a hierarchy of power that bred resentment and suspicion among the various ethnic groups. The North, with its largely Muslim population, was seen as more amenable to British rule and thus enjoyed certain advantages, particularly in terms of political representation. The South, on the other hand, with its more diverse religious landscape and a burgeoning educated elite, chafed under what it perceived as Northern domination. The introduction of Western education, while intended to create a class of Nigerians sympathetic to British interests, also had the unintended consequence of fostering a sense of nationalism and a desire for self-determination. As the winds of change swept across Africa in the mid-20th century, Nigeria too felt the irresistible pull of independence. Nationalist movements, spearheaded by educated Nigerians who had tasted Western ideals of liberty and self-governance, gained momentum. However, this burgeoning nationalism was not without its internal contradictions. While there was a shared desire to break free from the shackles of colonialism, there was no clear consensus on what form this new independent Nigeria should take. Regional identities, northern, western and eastern, forged during the colonial era, often took precedence over a unified national identity. Each region, with its distinct cultural, religious and economic interests, harbored anxieties about its place in a post-colonial Nigeria. The northern region, politically dominant but economically lagging, feared being left behind in a nation where power might shift to the more prosperous south. The western region, with its strong Yoruba identity and a history of pre-colonial kingdoms, sought to protect its cultural and economic interests. The eastern region, home to the Igbo people, who had made significant strides in education and commerce, felt increasingly marginalized despite their contributions to the nation's growth. The years leading up to the Civil War were marked by a volatile political climate. The transfer of power from British colonial rulers to Nigerian hands did little to quell the underlying tensions. If anything, it brought them into sharper focus. The First Republic, plagued by corruption, electoral malpractice, and a winner-takes-all political culture, failed to address the fears and aspirations of the various regions. Political parties, often formed along ethnic and regional lines, further deepened the divisions. The Northern People's Congress, dominated by the Hausa Fulani elite, controlled the federal government, while the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, with a strong Igbo following, and the Action Group, popular in the West, became increasingly critical of Northern hegemony. This delicate political balance was shattered in 1966 when a group of young army officers, mostly of Igbo origin, staged a coup d'etat. The coup, while ostensibly aimed at rooting out corruption and restoring order, was widely perceived as an Igbo power grab, further alienating the North and exacerbating existing ethnic tensions. The stage was set for a counter-coup led by Northern officers, which would plunge the nation into a spiral of violence and retribution. The year 1966 dawned on a Nigeria teetering on the brink. The political landscape, marred by corruption and regionalism, created an environment ripe for discontent. Disillusioned young officers plotted to seize power. On January 15th, Major Nzogwu spearheaded a coup that altered Nigerian history. The coup resulted in the assassination of Prime Minister Balewa and other northern politicians. Many plotters were Igbo, fueling suspicions of an attempt to establish Igbo supremacy. The coup deepened the chasm between North and South, inflaming ethnic tensions. It set the stage for a cycle of violence and reprisal. The events of January 1966 highlighted the fragility of the Nigerian state. In the aftermath of the January coup, Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, an Igbo officer, emerged as the head of state. Ironsi, a career soldier who had distinguished himself in the army, inherited a nation deeply divided and suspicious. His every action was scrutinized through the lens of ethnicity, his intentions questioned, his motives doubted. Ironsi's attempts to unify the country through a series of decrees aimed at centralizing power were met with suspicion, particularly in the north. The Unification Decree, which sought to abolish the federal system and create a unitary state, was seen by many Northerners as a ploy to consolidate Igbo power. Ironsi's decision to retain many Igbo officers in key positions further fueled Northern anxieties. Despite his efforts to project an image of national unity, Ironsi's rule was marred by a growing sense of unease and mistrust. Rumors of a northern counter-coup began to circulate, further exacerbating the climate of fear and suspicion. The events of January had unleashed forces that even a leader of Ironsi's stature could not contain. Section 3. Northern Backlash, the July Counter-Coup. The simmering resentment in the north, fueled by the perceived injustices of the January coup and Ironsi's policies, finally boiled over in July 1966. A group of northern officers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed and a young Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, staged a counter-coup, overthrowing Ironsi and effectively ending his brief reign. The July counter-coup was a watershed moment in Nigerian history. It unleashed a wave of violence against Igbos living in the north, resulting in the deaths of thousands. The massacres, often carried out with brutal efficiency, sent shockwaves through the nation and the international community. Fearing for their lives, hundreds of thousands of Igbos fled the north, seeking refuge in their homeland in the southeast. Section 1. The Dawn of Secession. The massacres of 1966 left the Igbo people reeling, their sense of belonging within Nigeria shattered. The violence they had endured fueled a growing clamor for self-determination. The idea of Biafra, a separate and independent nation for the Igbo people, gained traction. Leading this movement was Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. On May 30th, 1967, Ojukwu declared the independence of the Republic of Biafra. Section 2. The World Takes Notice. The declaration of Biafra sent shockwaves through Nigeria and the international community. The Nigerian government, led by General Yakubu Gowon, condemned the secession as an act of treason and vowed to use all means necessary to preserve the unity of the nation. The stage was set for a bloody confrontation, a brother-against-brother conflict that would test the very fabric of Nigerian society. The international response to Biafra's secession was mixed. Most African nations, wary of setting a precedent for secessionist movements within their own borders, sided with Nigeria. The Organization of African Unity, or OAU, refused to recognize Biafra, urging dialogue and reconciliation. However, Biafra did find some support among Western nations, particularly France, which saw an opportunity to undermine British influence in the region. This support, while largely symbolic, provided a lifeline to the fledgling nation, bolstering its morale and providing it with a platform on the world stage. The Biafran conflict, with its complex web of ethnic tensions, political ambitions and Cold War rivalries, quickly evolved into a proxy war, drawing in external actors and highlighting the challenges of nation-building in post-colonial Africa. The declaration of Biafra on May 30th, 1967, shattered the fragile peace in Nigeria. The Nigerian government viewed secession as rebellion that had to be crushed. On July 6, 1967, the Nigerian Federal Army launched an offensive into Biafra, starting the Nigerian Civil War. The fall of Nsukka was a significant victory, but came at a heavy cost. The early days of the war were marked by chaos and brutal intensity. The conflict quickly escalated into a full-blown civil war with regional implications. As the Nigerian Federal Army tightened its grip on Biafran territory, the Biafran leadership realized the need for a bold counter-offensive. In August 1967, Biafran forces under Lieutenant Colonel Banjo launched an offensive into the mid-western region. They swiftly captured Benin City and advanced towards Ore, aiming for Lagos. The Biafran advance sent shockwaves through the Nigerian government and military command. Despite initial successes, Biafran troops faced stretched supply lines and Nigerian air superiority. The Biafran advance was short-lived. Nigerian forces launched a counter-offensive, pushing Biafrans back. The war settled into a brutal stalemate, with both sides launching sporadic offensives. The Nigerian blockade led to a devastating humanitarian crisis in Biafra. The Nigerian blockade cut off Biafra, leading to a severe famine. Images of starving children shocked the world, highlighting the war's brutal toll. The Nigerian government maintained the blockade as a necessary military measure. The international community responded to Biafra's crisis with humanitarian aid. Aid workers risked their lives to deliver food and medicine. The conflict highlighted the complexities of providing aid in war zones. By 1968, the war became a grim pattern of attrition. Both sides faced heavy casualties and destruction. The conflict dragged on with no end in sight. Both sides waged a fierce propaganda war. Radio Biafra rallied support, while Nigeria countered with its own narrative. The propaganda shaped perceptions and influenced public opinion. The war attracted foreign intervention, turning it into a proxy conflict. Nigeria received support from Britain and the Soviet Union. Biafra found symbolic support from France and Israel. By late 1969, Nigerian forces launched a final offensive. Biafran strongholds fell and Ojukwu fled into exile. General Effiong announced Biafra's unconditional surrender. General Gowon declared a policy of no victor, no vanquished. The policy aimed at reconciliation and national reconstruction. The war's deep scars made implementation challenging. The war left a lasting impact on Nigeria's psyche. Rebuilding the nation was a daunting task. Suspicion and resentment hindered reconciliation. The legacy of Biafra continued to shape Nigerian society. The war fostered a sense of identity and resilience among the Igbo. The conflict highlighted the need for addressing historical injustices. The Nigerian Civil War, a harrowing chapter in the nation's history, serves as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of division. The war left behind a legacy of resilience, reconciliation, and an enduring quest for lasting peace. The Igbo people emerged with a profound sense of identity and a commitment to ensuring such horrors are never repeated. The war revealed the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. The Biafran people displayed remarkable courage and a deep love for their homeland. Their story is one of innovation, self-reliance, and the enduring power of the human will to survive. The Nigerian spirit emerged stronger, more determined to forge a path towards a brighter future. The legacy of the war continues to shape Nigeria's political landscape and its social fabric. The conflict underscored the importance of national unity and the imperative of peaceful coexistence. The lessons learned serve as a guidepost for promoting inter-ethnic harmony and ensuring all voices are heard. The Nigerian Civil War serves as a testament to the enduring human capacity for forgiveness and reconciliation. It reminds us that lasting peace lies in acknowledging the past and embracing a future built on justice, equality, and respect for all.